Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, although I record this podcast every day and schedule in 40 to 50 interviews every month, every now and again I hear a story that I just know will stay with me forever. And today's guest delivered one of those moments. And his name is Tshepo Mahloko, and he heads up the CoInnovation Lab for SAP. And he leads a team dedicated to developing groundbreaking applications for software and technology. But it's his inspiring journey to his career as a technologist that truly serves as a foundation for his current vision as a leader. Because growing up in South Africa, he began honing his skills as an innovator from a very young age, experimenting with ways to pair technological prowess with an unwavering passion for social good. And he ultimately found early success applying these abilities by leading two distinct grassroots initiatives that employed technology to help alleviate poverty within his community. So I want to learn more about these formative experiences, how they helped him mould his ability, and especially as a problem solver, and how it helped him further reinforce an ability to lead within a highly competitive field. So today I want to hear more about his backstory, taking the African way of innovation to a global company like SAP, but also by staying true to his roots and giving back to his community. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Johannesburg so we can speak with Tshepo now about his story and leading SAP CoInnovation Lab. So a massive warm welcome to the podcast. You've had such an interesting life. So for everyone listening, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me today. So I grew up in Botshabelo, which is the second biggest township in South Africa. And there's generally a high rate of unemployment, lack of resources in that environment, which is not the greatest place for a kid to sort of grow up, right? Because you would want access to recreational facilities and all sorts of things to do, which we really didn't have much of, or if any at all. And in that environment, what we had to do was we had to create our own recreational things, like toys. We created cars from old material that was lying around. We'll take empty milk cartons with empty cans, put them together to make a car, and would make kites and all sorts of lovely things that really kept us entertained at the time. And most of that knowledge did not even come from books or anything like that. It's just knowledge that was shared amongst the community itself. So that sense of collaboration is in essence what marked the bulk of my childhood. And I think since then I've always been inspired by the people around me and my environment.
And I'm curious, how did you go from there to SAP? Because I feel there's got to be a story there too, right?
Sure. My love for technology actually started late in my high school years. Growing up as a child, I wanted to be something totally different. In the community where I grew up, we generally had teachers, nurses, policemen. But then I had this uncle who was an auditor or an accountant, and he seemed to be a bit more successful than the rest of the teachers, nurses, and policemen. So I decided when I grow up, I want to be like him. I want to go into auditing and accounting. But it's until 1998 when I got a monochrome computer. So this monochrome computer is this one color screen computer which only works on command prompts. It doesn't have a mouse. But I spent so much time in front of that computer learning how to use it, learning the different command prompts, or I had games also. I had Tetris on it, and I would spend hours on it. And then this particular uncle of mine realized that I had taken a keen interest in computers, but the one that I was using was very outdated. So he decided to buy me a Pentium 1 computer. And since then, the rest was history. I took so much interest. I would sit there the whole day. And when I learned that you could even create your own software and not necessarily use what you have on the computer, I was totally sold. And then I went and studied BSc Information Technology with the University of the Free State. While I was there, I started writing my own software, And later on, with a friend of mine, we actually realized actually our community can do with some of the software that one can create and some computers, more especially businesses that operated in that community. One particular area that we looked at was developing a point of sale system for what we call spaza shops in South Africa, which are sort of informal convenience stores that didn't have any systems, and they really needed help more, especially around stock control and all of these things. Then we wrote the software for them. At the time, they were too small, so a lot of the big companies wouldn't write software for them. So we decided we come from this community. Let's use the knowledge that we've gained to try help these businesses. Hopefully, they will grow and, in essence, hire more people. And funny enough, that took off so well. We had such a huge uptake of this point of sale system of ours that we started getting interest now from bigger companies that were looking now for HR systems and logistics systems. And initially, we thought we'd also build it as quickly as we did with the point of sale system. But after doing a bit of research, I came across SAP and then realized, okay, some of these systems are bigger than what we can achieve with just the two developers. And that's how I came to learn about SAP. So I decided, the best way to learn how to deliver some of these HR systems is by going and joining SAP themselves and then learning the technology. And it was around 2007 that I moved then from the Free State to Johannesburg, where I live now, to come and join SAP.
What an amazing story. And of course, fast forward to 2022, and you're now with SAP CoInnovation Lab. So can you tell me a little bit more about your role and what does your day-to-day look like in these innovation labs?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my role at the moment is I head up the SAP CoInnovation Lab for Africa. So I look after all the partners in this particular region. So we work with these partners to help them build solutions on our platforms. So anything that SAP does not cater for, SAP works with its partner ecosystem to give them the platforms and the technology to build solutions for their markets. Right. And one of the ways that we do this as the SAP CoInnovation Lab is through what we call a hack to build, which is an initiative that starts off with a 7-day hackathon, right? And this 7-day hackathon is to help partners innovate very rapidly. So in a 7-day period, they come with an idea, and after the 7 days, they come up with a validated sort of solution prototype to say this is the best technology to use for this, or this idea would work or not. In those 7 days, we work very closely with them as well to help them build this particular solution prototype. Once it's validated after this exercise, we then work with them to say, hey, so this can work. How can we help you to take this solution to market? Because it clearly solves a customer problem, and we would definitely want you to take it to customers. So we work with them then thereafter for 2 to 3 months, where we help them commercialize that solution.
And I'm curious, are you working directly with customers, or is this just innovating behind the scenes?
So our innovation is for customers, but we primarily work with partners. Yep. And the reason why we do this, because we've realized, and that's how the whole SAP ecosystem works, that you cannot solve the world's problems by yourself. You cannot do it alone. So the partner ecosystem and the collaboration that we have with them is key to ensuring that we get that critical mass when it comes to developing solutions. So we focus primarily on working with partners for that multiplier effect. Okay, so you work with a partner, and a partner would typically want to build a solution that they can sell to multiple customers. They could be solving a solution for a particular industry, which they will then sell to multiple customers in that particular industry. SAP alone cannot serve every single customer. So it's definitely for the customer, and it's very targeted to working with partners for that multiplier effect that these partners bring to the table.
And apologies for asking this, but I'm a podcast host, so I've got to go there. And I imagine you are locked down to a whole heap of NDAs. But are there any, or is it can you talk about any innovative, interesting projects that you're working on recently or working on currently? Even if it's not mentioning any names, is there anything you can share?
Yes, look, there is one that I can definitely share with you, which has been published quite a number of times already. And this particular partner did collaborate with us in building this solution on our SAP IoT platforms. And it's one called ERP.NGO, right,
Yeah.
which is looking at leveraging technology to protect elephants and rhinos from being killed or from poaching in Africa. And the reason why I like this one very much is because of how they went about to find solutions to this particular problem, which I sort of dub as the African way of innovating, which is generally about starting from where you are, right? So, I mean, they went and they built a drone that was that they built using old PVC pipe, styrofoam boards that they had, and a pull pipe for the main stem of that drone, which they use for monitoring. And I mean, looking at this drone that they created, it almost reminded me of my own childhood and how we would create all sorts of things using material that was just lying around to create toys and also the things that could entertain us. So that really spoke to me, being involved in that particular project. So we helped them with our SAP IoT platform where they could create rules and actions on the feeds that's coming from the drone that's monitoring these nature reserves. They also had camera traps, and these rules and actions that we set up using our SAP IoT platforms will trigger, let's say, situations that could pose a threat to the animals. And then once an event has been triggered, the necessary authorities would then be informed to go and monitor or to go and take action, basically. So I really loved the way that they went around in sort of finding solutions or building tools that could be used to help in this endeavor.
And if I was to put you on the spot, what would you say has been your favourite project to work on at the SAP CoInnovation Labs? And what would the reason behind that choice be?
It was definitely this particular one that I just mentioned now, the ERP.NGO project. That was my favorite because of, like I mentioned, the approach that they took to find the sort of tools and technology or leveraging technology to get to the to get to the solution for the problem. I believe our story as Africa is that of resilience and resourcefulness, where you start with whatever you have. They didn't have a drone. They didn't have to buy a drone. They had a whole lot of styrofoam material lying around, an old pool pipe, and they found a way of putting all of these together to create something that could be used as a way to monitor the activity within the nature reserves themselves. And I like that approach to solving problems because you almost start with what the fundamental issue is as opposed to starting with the technology first.
And it's such an inspirational story. And one of the reasons I record this podcast every single day is to try and share stories from all over the world around how technology is transforming every aspect of our life. And I think so far we've had people from about 70 different countries. It's so important to get these stories shared out there beyond Silicon Valley. And you've talked about the African way of innovation. But of course, SAP is a global company. So how important is it to you, and how do you keep your roots and approach in your day-to-day job? Is that a challenge? Or
I like that question that you asked me. So I think it's a great privilege to be working for SAP and also working for SAP in my region, because we work as a global network anyway, right? Of these co-innovation labs. We have about 14 globally. And SAP, being a technology giant, they bring their robust platforms, right, to the party that are easy to use, which sort of gives our partners the freedom really to be creative and focus on solving the actual solutions, which actually resonates with what I mentioned earlier on about the African way of innovating, about when you don't have much, you're forced to almost focus on the fundamental problem and solving for that first before you sort of take the hammer and look for the nail sort of approach. And it's basically this bottom-up approach, which I think we bring to the party, given our history of really not having much, where SAP comes with the top-down type approach with proven technology that is easy to use and easy to understand. And it's where these come together, that middle point, where I think the sweet spot is, because of just the fundamental reason that you started off by focusing on the fundamental problem before the technology itself, that by the time you then bring the technology to the party, the sort of solutions that you come up with generally are the ones that move things or that really address some of the biggest challenges that we have.
And it is so refreshing to hear you say those words. But I think because a lot of people listening will have worked in organisations where it's technology first and problem afterwards. So it's great to hear this. And I'm curious, more closer to home, is there something you see missing in your own community and communities that you feel compelled to strive and find a solution for in the future too?
Look, growing up, I mean, I've always been driven and inspired by observing and looking for ways to improve things in my own community. And I think that's why I initially started wanting to build a point of sale system to help some of these shops at least grow and run their businesses better. But I can tell you a lot has changed since then. There's been quite a lot of progress. And I think the focus now should probably be in the impartation of digital skills like coding to people around the community, because I believe in empowering people to help themselves because they understand their challenges better when because they experience them every day. So by imparting digital skills, you empower them then to sort of do something about it, to create something that could solve some of those challenges. And the thing is, once they have those skills, they can use them anywhere beyond the actual community itself. So that's definitely one initiative that I would like to take back to my community around education, more especially digital skills and coding.
And we also broadcast this podcast to listeners in 165 countries scattered around the world. And again, one of the reasons I'm passionate about recording it every single day is we don't know, there'll be somebody listening somewhere in the world and your words might inspire them to follow in your footsteps or do something in a similar vein. So what advice do you have for people who maybe grew up in a similar circumstances that want to work in the tech industry, don't know where to start, etc.? What would you advise that person listening, no matter what age they are?
I would definitely say stay curious.
Yeah.
Right. Always try different things, work hard, start where you are. Right. And I mean, if they have a keen interest in working in technology, you don't need a computer anymore to get started. There's so much that we can do with mobile devices that most of us have access to nowadays. And it's a case of just immersing yourself in that world and staying totally tuned into it. Working hard. Definitely. I mean, a lot of the stuff doesn't come easy. You definitely have to put in the time and make it fun too. It doesn't have to be boring. Right?
And your passion for tech really shines through in our conversation today, especially around making a difference. And what makes you personally passionate about working in the tech innovation space, would you say? Is there anything that springs to mind there on what drives you?
You know, the one thing that really drives me around working in tech is that it's a dynamic environment, right? You've got different problems that needs to be solved every single day. And tech gives you this opportunity to create. You know, you can create solutions to problems that come up every single day. And that in itself, I almost see it as an art form, right? And I like that sort of opportunity to solve problems in a way that is creative, in a way that could potentially change someone else's life. And that's what I enjoy.
Absolutely love that. And of course, none of us are able to achieve success without getting some help along the way. So I'd also like to use this podcast to ask you, is there a particular person who you're grateful towards, who helped you get where you are today, that we can send that positivity back out in the universe? Who would you thank?
Yeah. You know what? I would say there's a saying here that says that it's in Southern Sotho that says "Motu ki motu kabat," which actually means that I am because we are, right? So I believe I'm a product of the community that I grew up in.
Yeah.
In that community, it was so close-knit. Like everyone contributed in some shape or form to every single child that was growing in that community, whether it's provisioning with anything that you need or giving you advice, or everyone acted as a parent, a brother, or a sister and a friend to the rest of the community. But if I were to sort of mention anyone special, I would definitely say it's my uncle, the one who had inspired me to be an accountant. Just watching him growing up, he then realized, I think it was in 1998 when I had that monochrome computer, that this one definitely loves spending time on this computer, but he knew at the time that it was an outdated computer. And a year later, he came to visit us and he brought me a Pentium 1 computer, which was at least worked with a mouse, and it was more recent than the one that I was using. And since then, I've never looked back, and I've taken the love for computers, and I almost feel like he started it all for me.
Wow, what a great story. And for anyone listening that would just like to find out more information, contact you or your team or anything, I appreciate SAP is a big, big website. Is there anywhere you would point anybody listening to today, so where they can find out more information?
Yeah, so our team as a CoInnovation Lab can be found, or you can find more information about what we do at COIL, COIL, which is short for CoInnovation Lab, .sap.com. On that page, you'll find more information about our Hack to Build offering. We have more than just Hack to Build. We also have one-on-one coaching services for partners that want to innovate on our platforms. What you'll also be able to do on that website, be able to see projects that we have also done with other partners that have been published, just for some inspiration, and also some of the things that came out of these Hack to Build initiatives that I mentioned earlier on.
Well, I'll add the link to that to the show notes so people can find out more information about that. And I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And SAP is a global company, and your working is making a difference all around the world with that. But I also love how you're also very focused on your own community and striving to find solutions for that community in the future too. It's a completely inspirational story and ride that you've been on. So thank you so much for sharing that with me today.
Thank you so much, Neil. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Wow, what an inspirational story. And that is why I record this podcast and sharing stories like this from all around the world to a global audience every day. And I really do hope his uncle is able to listen to this episode and receive that thank you message of the impact it had on Tshepos' life. But now I want to offer you this same platform to share your story and your insights and your expertise and put where you live on the map too. After all, technology does work best when it brings people together. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk if you'd like to work with me, whether that be ghostwriting, thought leadership blogs, your business blogs, or working with me to create your own podcast. But that's it for today, so a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.